I'm Mason, 32, and today I found out my own family committed grand larceny against me. Before I tell you about the moment my brother's face turned the color of old ash, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I really want to know if families are this crazy everywhere else in the world, or if I just got lucky. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of Tuesday that feels heavy, like the air is full of water but it won't rain. I had taken off early from my job as a landscape architect. I wasn't going on vacation. I wasn't sick. I was going to my parents' house to collect the one thing in this world that actually mattered to me. My grandmother, Eleanor, passed away 6 months ago. The funeral was a blur of black suits and fake tears from people who hadn't visited her in a decade. I was the one who held her hand when she took her last breath. I was the one who knew she liked her tea with exactly 1 teaspoon of honey and a splash of milk. And in her will, she left me specific instructions regarding her sapphire ring. It wasn't just jewelry. It was her legacy. She told me stories about that ring when I was a kid, how she wore it when she traveled across Europe, how it sparked in the sunlight of the Italian coast. It was appraised at $50,000. But the money didn't matter. It was the memory. I pulled my truck into my parents' driveway. It's a nice house. Too nice for their income, honestly, but my father, Thomas, and my mother, Catherine, have always been masters of the illusion. They prioritize the facade over the foundation. That's a landscaping term, but it applies to people, too. I had the legal paperwork in my passenger seat. The lawyer had finally cleared the probate process. The ring was mine. It was supposed to be in the wall safe in my father's study, where it had been kept for safekeeping since the funeral. I unlocked the front door with my key. The house smelled like lemon polish and potpourri, that specific scent that tries too hard to cover up the smell of old secrets. "Mom? Dad?" I called out. My mother appeared from the kitchen. She was wearing her tennis outfit, though I knew for a fact she hadn't played tennis in 5 years. She wiped her hands on a towel, her smile tight. It didn't reach her eyes. It never did with me. "Mason," she said, her voice pitching up a little too high. "We weren't expecting you until the weekend. I texted you, Mom. I told you I was coming to get the ring." The lawyer gave the green light. I saw her glance toward the living room. My father was sitting there reading a newspaper. He didn't look up. That was my first clue. My stomach dropped. Felt like I had swallowed a stone. "Right," Mom said. "About that." I walked past her straight into the study. The painting of the ship at sea that covered the wall safe was crooked. I pushed it aside. The safe door was slightly ajar. Empty. The little velvet box was gone. I turned around. My parents were standing in the doorway of the study now. They looked like 2 teenagers who had been caught smoking behind the gym, except there was no guilt in their eyes, only defiance. "Where is it?" I asked. My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists at my sides to hide it. "Mason, sit down," Dad said, finally speaking. "Let's be reasonable." "I don't want to sit down. I want the ring Grandma left me. The ring that is legally mine." Mom sighed, the kind of sigh she used when I was a child and asked for something too expensive for Christmas. "We had a family emergency, Mason." "Emergency?" I looked them over. "You look fine. The house is standing." "What emergency?" "It's Julian," Mom said. "Julian. My older brother. The golden child. The boy who could do no wrong, even when he crashed 3 cars before he turned 20. Julian, who is currently a sales director at some tech firm, though I'm pretty sure his actual job title was professional leech." "Is he hurt?" I asked. "No," Dad said, stepping forward. "He needed help. He's proposing to Chloe." I blinked. "Okay. And, Mom continued, smoothing her skirt. "Chloe comes from a very prominent family. You know, her father is in real estate development. They expect a certain standard." The pieces clicked together in my head like a bear trap snapping shut. "You gave him the ring," I whispered. "We didn't give it to him," Dad corrected. "We let him use it. For the proposal. He needs to make a good impression, Mason. He can't propose to a girl like Chloe with a store-bought diamond. He needs heritage. He needs weight. It's not yours to give, I shouted. The sound bounced off the mahogany walls. Grandma left it to me, specifically, by name. You're not even seeing anyone, Mason, Mom snapped, dropping the sweet facade. What are you going to do with a $50,000 Sapphire? Keep it in a drawer? Julian is building a future. He's securing a marriage that will elevate this entire family. You should be happy for him. You should be proud to contribute. Contribute. I laughed. A harsh, dry sound. You stole it. That's theft. Grand larceny. Don't use those words with us, Dad warned, his face reddening. We are your parents. We decided that the ring serves a better purpose on Chloe's finger than in your pocket. When you find a nice girl, we'll help you buy something appropriate. Appropriate. I stepped closer to them. You think stealing my inheritance is appropriate? I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. What are you doing? Mom asked, panic finally flickering in her eyes. I'm calling the police, I said. And then I'm calling my lawyer. You wouldn't, Dad scoffed. Arrest your own brother? Ruin his engagement? You'd be the pariah of this town, Mason. Think about it. Do you really want to be the son who sent his brother to jail over a piece of jewelry? I hesitated. They knew exactly where to hit me. They knew I hated conflict. They knew I valued peace. But this wasn't just about a ring. It was about respect. It was about Grandma. Just then, my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. I looked down. It was Julian. He had posted a photo 5 minutes ago. It was a close-up of a perfectly manicured hand, Chloe's hand. And there, sitting on her ring finger, was the sapphire. It was huge, deep blue, surrounded by diamonds. The caption read, "She said yes, locking down the love of my life. A man provides the best for his queen. $50,000 on her finger, but she's priceless to me. Hashtag blessed, hashtag heirloom, hashtag she is mine." I stared at the screen. The audacity. He was bragging about the price. He was using Grandma's memory to flex on the internet. He posted it, I said, showing the screen to my parents. He's bragging about the value. It looks beautiful on her, Mom said, smiling at the screen. See? It belongs there. I put the phone in my pocket. The rage in my chest cooled into something hard and cold. Something dangerous. You're right, I said quietly. Dad relaxed. Good. I knew you'd see reason. I'm not calling the police, I said. Mom let out a breath. Thank goodness. I'll make some tea. No, I said, turning to the door. I'm not staying for tea. And I'm not calling the police because I don't want Julian to have the excuse of being a victim. I don't want him to say his jealous little brother ruined his moment. I opened the front door. The sun was shining outside, bright and mocking. I'm going to get it back, I told them. And when I do, you two are going to realize exactly what you've lost. You didn't just lose a ring today. You lost a son. Oh, stop being dramatic, Mom called out as I walked to my truck. You'll get over it by Thanksgiving. I slammed the truck door. I didn't start the engine immediately. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I looked at the house, the perfectly manicured lawn, the fresh paint, the lies. They thought I was weak. They thought I was the backup plan child, the one who fixed things, the one who took care of the messy parts of life like sickness and death so Julian could shine in the spotlight. They were wrong. I started the engine. I wasn't going home. I was going to the one place where truth still existed. I was going to see Grandpa Isaac. Driving away from my parents' house, the road blurred. I wasn't crying, I was past that. I was vibrating with anger. Every mile marker I passed felt like a memory I didn't want to revisit. You have to understand the dynamic. In my family, Julian was the sun, and the rest of us were just planets hoping to catch a little warmth. When Julian turned 16, he got a brand new Mustang. When I turned 16, I got the Mustang, after Julian had wrecked the transmission and smoked in it for 2 years. When Julian went to college, my parents threw a gala. When I graduated with honors in landscape architecture, they sent a card with a $50 bill inside. It had always been this way, except for Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Isaac. I merged onto the highway, heading toward the Shady Oaks retirement community. The name was a joke. There were barely any oaks and it wasn't particularly shady, but it was expensive. My parents paid the bare minimum and I covered the rest of the bill every month, almost $2,000 out of my own salary, so Grandpa could have a private room and decent food. Julian didn't contribute a dime. He said his cash flow was tied up in investments. I thought back to the funeral 6 months ago. The rain was relentless that day. We were standing by the gravesite. The priest was droning on about peace. Julian was checking his watch, probably worried about missing a tea time. Mom was crying, but she was checking her makeup in her compact mirror every 2 minutes. I remembered looking at the casket and feeling like my chest was being crushed. Grandma was the one who taught me how to plant a garden. She was the one who sat with me when I failed my math test in 3rd grade and told me I was smart in other ways. After the service, the lawyer read the will in a small, stuffy office. To my son Thomas, I leave the house. To my grandson Julian, I leave my antique clock collection. Julian had sold those clocks within a week. I found out later. And to my grandson Mason, the lawyer had paused, looking over his glasses. I leave my sapphire ring and the deed to the plot of land in West Creek. I remembered Julian snorting. The swamp land? Good luck with that, Maze. But then the lawyer mentioned the ring. The sapphire ring, appraised at $50,000. Julian's head had snapped up. Wait, why does he get the ring? He's a guy. I'm the oldest. I should get the jewelry to pass down. The will is specific, the lawyer had said. It goes to Mason. Julian had glared at me then, a look of pure entitlement. And now, 6 months later, he had taken what he believed was rightfully his. I pulled into the parking lot of the nursing home. It was a brick building, clean but sterile. I took a deep breath, composing myself. I couldn't let Grandpa see me in a rage. He had a weak heart, or so the doctors said. Personally, I thought his heart was the strongest thing about him. I walked through the automatic doors. The smell hit me instantly. Antiseptic, boiled vegetables, and lavender air freshener. It was the smell of waiting. Hi, Mason. The receptionist, Sarah, smiled at me. He's in the sunroom. Thanks, Sarah. I found Grandpa Isaac sitting by the window in his wheelchair. He was 85, frail, with skin like parchment paper, but his eyes were sharp. He was staring at a blue jay outside the window. Hey, Grandpa, I said, forcing a lightness into my voice that I didn't feel. He turned. His face lit up. There he is, the only Miller man who knows the difference between a petunia and a potato. I chuckled, pulling up a plastic chair. How are you feeling today? Like a rusty hinge, he said, gripping my hand. His hand was cold, but his grip was surprisingly firm. But I'm better now that you're here. You look like hell, son. I looked away. Thanks. I'm serious. He tapped my hand. Your jaw is tight enough to crack a walnut. What did they do? He didn't say who. He knew. It was always they. My parents. Julian. I sighed. I couldn't lie to him. I went to the house today to get the ring. Grandma's ring. Grandpa's smile faded. He leaned back in his chair. And it was gone. He didn't gasp. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded slowly. Julian. Yeah, I said, the bitterness leaking into my voice. He proposed to Chloe. He posted it on Instagram. Bragged about the price. Mom and Dad said he needed it to make a good impression. They said I didn't need it because I wasn't building a future. I put my head in my hands. I feel like an idiot, Grandpa. I feel like I let Grandma down. She wanted me to have it. The silence stretched for a long moment. I expected him to be angry. I expected him to yell, to demand I call the police, to summon his son and yell at him. Instead, I heard a sound I didn't expect. A chuckle. A dry, raspy chuckle that turned into a cough. I looked up. Grandpa Isaac was smiling. Not a happy smile. A mischievous, knowing smile. The kind of smile a poker player has when he's holding 4 aces and his opponent just went all in. Let him keep it, Grandpa said softly. I stared at him. What? Grandpa, that ring is worth $50,000. It's my inheritance. It's the only thing of value she left me besides that marshy land. Mason, Grandpa leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Do you remember 1998? I was 4 years old, Grandpa. Right? Well, in 1998, your grandmother and I wanted to buy that land in West Creek. The one you have the deed to now. Everyone said we were crazy. They said it was useless. But Eleanor, she had a vision. She knew the town was expanding that way. Okay. I was confused. What does that have to do with the ring? We didn't have the cash for the down payment, Grandpa said, his eyes twinkling. We were short exactly $45,000. My heart stopped. She sold it? I whispered. She sold the stone, Grandpa corrected. She took that big, beautiful sapphire out of the setting and sold it to a private collector in New York. It broke her heart a little, but she knew investing in land was smarter than wearing a rock on her hand. But I saw the ring, at the funeral, in the box. It looked real. Of course it looked real. Grandpa slapped his knee, delighted. Eleanor had a duplicate made. High-quality paste, lead glass, mason, beautifully cut, perfectly set in the original gold band. But structurally, it's basically a very expensive piece of a windshield. My mouth fell open. So the ring Julian stole, the ring on Chloe's finger, is worth about $50 in materials? Grandpa wheezed, wiping a tear of laughter from his eye. Maybe $100 for the gold setting. But the stone? It's fake, Mason. It's a prop. I sat back in the plastic chair, my brain trying to process this. My brother, the man who cared more about brand names than human beings, had just proposed to a wealthy socialite with a piece of glass. Does anyone else know? I asked. No one. Grandpa shook his head. Just me and Eleanor. And now your parents think it's the real deal. They think that appraisal from 1990 is still valid. A slow grin started to spread across my face. The anger that had been consuming me moments ago evaporated, replaced by a cold, thrilling sense of justice. My brother's face went gray. I muttered to myself, imagining the moment he found out. Exactly, Grandpa said. Now listen to me. Don't say a word. Not yet. When? I asked. The engagement party, Grandpa said. It's this Saturday, right? At that fancy steakhouse. Yeah, the Gilded Fork. Take me, Grandpa commanded. Get my suit dry cleaned. I want to be there. I want to toast the happy couple. You want to tell them in front of everyone? Mason, Grandpa's expression turned serious. They stole from you. They disrespected Eleanor's wishes. They treated you like you don't matter. This time they learned that value isn't about what shines. It's about what's real. And that land you got? That swamp. Yeah. Check the zoning updates for West Creek, he winked. But do it after the party. For now, let's focus on the show. I looked at my grandfather, this frail man in a wheelchair who was suddenly the most powerful person in my world. You're a genius, Grandpa. I know, he grinned. Now go get me a pudding cup. Plotting revenge makes me hungry. The next 3 days were a masterclass in self-control. I had to go to work, design gardens for rich clients, and pretend I wasn't holding on to a nuclear secret. I decided I needed to be absolutely sure. Grandpa's memory was good, but at 85, details can get fuzzy. I needed verification. I called my friend Wyatt. Wyatt and I went to high school together. He was the only guy I knew who didn't look down on me for driving a beat-up truck. Now, he was a certified gemologist and owned a small but reputable jewelry store downtown. Hey, Maze, Wyatt greeted me when I walked into his shop on Wednesday. Looking for something for a lucky lady? Or just hiding from your family? Hiding, mostly. I leaned on the counter. Listen, I have a hypothetical question. Shoot. If someone had a sapphire ring, a big one, antique cushion cut, and they wanted to know if it was real without taking it off the finger, could they? Wyatt laughed. Not accurately. I mean, I can spot a bad fake from across the room. But a good synthetic? or high-end paste. You need a loupe. You need to check the refractive index. Why? I hesitated. Julian proposed to Chloe. I saw. Wyatt rolled his eyes. The $50,000 rock. It's all over Facebook. It's practically its own celebrity. Did your grandmother leave that to him? No. She left it to me. They took it. Wyatt stopped polishing a watch. Dude, that sucks. You want me to bust his kneecaps? No, I smiled. I heard a rumor that maybe it's not what they think it is. Grandpa told me something. I leaned in and whispered the secret about the glass. Wyatt let out a low whistle. Oh, that is rich. That is delicious. But wait. If Julian is flashing it around, hasn't he had it appraised? Chloe's dad is Mr. Robert. He's a shark. He wouldn't let his daughter marry a guy without checking the assets. That was a good point. A terrifying point. If Julian had gotten it appraised, the jig was up. He would know it's fake. I need to find out, I said. I left the shop and drove toward Julian's office. He worked in a glass-walled building in the tech district. I parked my truck next to a line of Teslas and BMWs. And there it was. His car. A Porsche Panamera. Black, sleek, aggressive. It was new. He had just traded in his Mercedes last month. I walked over to it. I wasn't planning to key it. I'm not a savage, but I noticed something on the passenger seat. A stack of papers. I shielded my eyes and peered through the window. It was a lease agreement. But not just a lease. It was a high-risk financing document. I saw the interest rate circled in red marker. 18%. 18%? That was predatory. That was the kind of rate you get when your credit score is in the toilet. Then I saw another envelope peeking out from under the seat. It had a logo I recognized. Pawn and loan. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian. Hey little bro, heard you stopped by mom and dad's. Don't be a sour grape. Come to the engagement dinner. Bring grandpa. Mr. Robert wants to meet the whole clan. Try to dress like you make more than minimum wage. Okay? I stared at the text. He was baiting me. I waited for him to come out. At 5 p.m. sharp, Julian walked out of the building. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He looked like success. But now, looking closer, I saw the stress lines around his eyes. I saw the way he checked his phone nervously. Mason, he called out, spotting me. He didn't look happy. What are you doing here? Stalking me? Just checking out the new ride, I said, leaning against the Porsche. Nice wheels. Expensive. Top of the line, Julian smirked, unlocking the door. Business is booming, Maze. You wouldn't understand. How's the gardening business? Landscaping, I corrected automatically. I heard you got the ring appraised. For insurance. Julian froze. His hand hovered over the door handle. He looked at me, eyes narrowing. Why do you care? Just curious. Since it was, mine. Julian laughed, but it sounded forced. Yeah, I took it to a guy. A friend of a friend. Didn't want to leave it at a shop, Too valuable. And it's worth 80 grand now, Julian lied. I knew he was lying. His left eye twitched. That was his tell. Market appreciation. Told Mr. Robert about it. He was impressed. Said it shows generational wealth. That's what Chloe needs, Mason. Security. Not a gardener. 80 grand, I repeated. Wow. Yeah. So don't get any ideas about asking for it back. It's part of my portfolio now. He got in the car and revved the engine aggressively. As he peeled out of the parking lot, I realized the truth. He hadn't gotten it appraised officially. He couldn't. If he did, he'd have to insure it, and that costs money. He was winging it. He was using the ring's reputation to leverage his status with Chloe's father. He was probably drowning in debt. The car, the clothes, the lifestyle, and this marriage was his lifeboat. He needed Mr. Robert's connections or money to stay afloat. And he was using a piece of glass to buy his way in. I got back in my truck. My heart was pounding. This was going to be so much worse than I thought. If the truth came out, it wouldn't just be embarrassing. It would destroy him financially. I thought about warning him. He was my brother, after all. Blood is thicker than water. Then I remembered the empty safe. I remembered the smirk. I remembered him calling me a sour grape while stealing my inheritance. Blood might be thicker than water, but it's also harder to clean up when it spills. I drove home and opened my closet. I pulled out my one good suit. It was charcoal gray, simple but tailored. "Okay, Grandpa," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's go to war." Saturday evening arrived with the weight of a looming storm. The sky was overcast, mirroring the mood in my gut. I spent an hour helping Grandpa Isaac get ready. He insisted on wearing his old military medals on his lapel. "Is that appropriate for an engagement party?" I asked, adjusting his tie. "I survived a war," Grandpa grunted. "I can survive a dinner with your mother." We took my truck because Grandpa's wheelchair didn't fit in a sedan. The venue was the Gilded Fork, the most expensive steakhouse in the city. Valet parking, crystal chandeliers, waiters who looked like models. It was exactly the kind of place Julian would choose to prove he belonged to the 1%. When we rolled into the private dining room, the party was already in full swing. There were about 20 people. My parents were there, holding champagne flutes, looking nervous. Julian was at the head of the table, his arm draped around Chloe. Chloe was beautiful, I had to admit. Blonde, polished, wearing a dress that probably cost $3,000. But her eyes were cold. She was scanning the room, assessing everything. And there, on her finger, under the crystal lights, was the ring. It sparkled ferociously. To the untrained eye, it was magnificent. "Mason! Dad!" My father, Thomas, rushed over. He looked relieved to see us, or maybe just relieved that we weren't wearing denim. "You made it. Good, good." "Hello, Thomas," Grandpa said, his voice steel. "Where do you want to park me?" "Right here next to me," Dad said. He leaned in to whisper to me. "Keep him calm, Mason. Mr. Robert is very particular." I looked across the table. Mr. Robert, Chloe's father, was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. He was sipping scotch and listening to Julian talk. "So, the market is volatile," Julian was saying, using big hand gestures. "But my assets are diversified. Real estate, tech, and of course, hard assets like family heirlooms." He gestured to Chloe's hand. Mr. Robert nodded approvingly. "Smart," Mr. Robert said. His voice was deep and gravelly. "I like a man who understands value. Chloe tells me this ring has been in your family for generations." "Since the 1920s, Julian beamed. "My grandmother's most prized possession. She wanted Chloe to have it." I felt Grandpa's hand tighten on the armrest of his wheelchair. I put my hand over his to steady him. "Not yet," I signaled. We sat down. The dinner was a blur of expensive food I couldn't taste. Lobster bisque, Wagyu beef. My mother kept shooting glances at me, silently warning me to behave. I watched Julian. He was drinking heavily. His face was flushed. He was high on his own lie. He kept touching the ring on Chloe's hand, showing it off to her aunts and cousins. $50,000. I heard him whisper to a cousin. Conservative estimate. Probably closer to 90 now. The cousin's eyes went wide. "You must really love her." "I do," Julian said. "Only the best." The deception was physical. It made my skin crawl. He wasn't just lying about the money. He was lying about the sentiment. He claimed Grandma wanted Chloe to have it. Grandma had never met Chloe. Dessert arrived, some kind of gold-flake chocolate cake. Mr. Robert stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room went silent. "I'd like to propose a toast," Mr. Robert said. "To Julian and Chloe." When Julian came to me to ask for my daughter's hand, I asked him one question. "Can you protect her? Not just physically, but fastidiously. Can you secure her future?" He paused, looking at Julian. Today, seeing this beautiful heirloom, seeing the respect for tradition and value, I believe the answer is yes. "Welcome to the family, son." Everyone clapped. Julian looked like he had just won the lottery. He stood up, beaming. "Thank you, Robert. It means the world to me. I promise to honor this ring and the woman wearing it." Excuse me. A raspy voice cut through the applause. The room froze. Everyone turned to look at the end of the table. Grandpa Isaac was raising his hand. Dad? My father hissed. Sit down. Not now. I am sitting down, Thomas. Grandpa snapped. I'm in a wheelchair. A few awkward chuckles rippled through the room. I'd like to say a few words, Grandpa said, his voice gaining strength. About the ring. Julian's smile faltered. He looked at me, panic in his eyes. He thought I had told Grandpa about the theft. He didn't know Grandpa knew more. Let him speak, Mr. Robert said, intrigued. It's the grandfather. Go ahead, sir. I wheeled Grandpa slightly forward so he could face everyone. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. That ring, Grandpa began, pointing a shaky finger at Chloe's hand. It's beautiful, isn't it? Yes, it is, Chloe said, smiling politely. My wife, Eleanor, loved it very much, Grandpa continued. She wore it to Paris. She wore it to Rome. She wore it when she held Julian as a baby. My mother smiled, thinking this was just a sentimental old man's speech. That's right, Dad. It has so much history. It does, Grandpa nodded. History is a funny thing. It's all about what we choose to remember and what we choose to forget. He looked directly at Julian. Julian went pale. Grandpa, maybe we can do this later. Julian started. Hush, boy, Grandpa commanded. The authority in his voice silenced the room. I want to tell you a story about 1998. I saw my father frown. He didn't know the story. In 1998, Grandpa said, Eleanor and I made a decision. We wanted to invest in our family's future. We wanted to buy a piece of land, but we were short on cash. So, Eleanor did something brave. He paused for effect. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. She took that ring to a jeweler in New York City, Grandpa said softly, and she sold the sapphire. The silence that followed Grandpa's words wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the room. Excuse me, Chloe asked, her voice trembling. She sold it. Julian was frozen. He looked like a statue of a man about to crumble. She sold the stone, Grandpa repeated, his voice clear and ringing, for $45,000. We used the money to buy the West Creek property. But, Mom stood up, her napkin clutching in her hand. Dad, you must be confused. The ring is right there. Look at it. It's blue. It shines. It shines because it's excellent craftsmanship, Grandpa said, a sad smile on his face. Eleanor had the stone replaced with high-grade paste. Lead glass. It's a very pretty piece of costume jewelry, worth about, I'd say $50. Maybe $75 with inflation. Boom. The payload. I watched Mr. Robert. His face went from confusion to realization to absolute fury in the span of 3 seconds. He turned his head slowly toward Julian. Julian's face was no longer pale. It was gray, ashen. He looked like he was going to vomit on the tablecloth. Is this true? Mr. Robert asked. His voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. I, Julian stammered. I didn't know. I swear. Mom, Dad, tell him. It's insured. It's appraised. You had it appraised? Mr. Robert barked. Show me the papers. Right now. It's at the office. My friend did it. Julian was drowning. He was flailing. You said it was worth $80,000, Chloe whispered, staring at the ring on her finger like it was a poisonous spider. You told my friends it was a museum piece. It is. Julian's desperation was pathetic. Grandpa is senile. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Look at it, Chloe. It's real. I am not senile, Grandpa said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. I have the bill of sale from 1998, and the receipt for the glass replacement. Mason, give this to Mr. Robert. I took the yellowed paper from Grandpa's hand. I walked around the table. My legs felt heavy, but my head was clear. I handed the paper to Mr. Robert. Mr. Robert put on his reading glasses. He scanned the document. Sold. 1 cushion-cut sapphire, for carats. Replaced with synthetic glass simulate. He read aloud. He dropped the paper on the table. He looked at Julian with a look of pure disgust. You lied, Mr. Robert said. You stood in my house, drank my scotch, and lied to my face about your assets. Robert, please. My father tried to intervene. We didn't know. We thought it was real. Julian didn't mean to. You gave him a fake ring? Mr. Robert turned on my father. What kind of family are you? Frauds? Is the rest of your portfolio fake too, Julian? Is that car yours? Is that job yours? The questions were hitting Julian like physical blows. I love her, Julian whispered. It was the only truth he had left, but it was too little, too late. Chloe stood up. She was crying, but they were angry tears. She struggled with the ring. It was tight on her finger. She yanked it, hurting herself until it popped off. It clattered onto the china plate. Clink. Sounded like cheap glass. Because it was. Get out, Chloe hissed. Chloe, baby, wait. I said get out, she screamed. Take your glass ring and get out. You embarrassed me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Julian, Mr. Robert said, standing up to his full height. I think you should leave before I call security. And don't ever contact my daughter again. If I find out you've leveraged my name for any loans, I will bury you legally. Julian looked around the room. His friends, his family, the waiters. Everyone was staring. The golden child had lost his luster. He was just a guy in a leased suit with a fake ring. He looked at me. His eyes were full of hate. You knew, he mouthed. I didn't say anything. I just stood next to Grandpa, my hand on his shoulder. Julian grabbed the ring from the plate and stormed out of the room. My parents chased after him. Julian, wait, we can explain. Mom cried out. The door slammed shut. The room was silent again, save for the soft jazz playing over the speakers. Mr. Robert looked at me and Grandpa. He took a deep breath, adjusting his tie. He was a businessman. He knew how to cut losses. I apologize for the scene, Mr. Robert said to the room. Then he looked at Grandpa. Thank you, sir, for your honesty. You saved my daughter from a very expensive mistake. Better a hard truth than a soft lie, Grandpa said. I wheeled Grandpa backward. We're going to go now. Take the cake, Grandpa whispered to me. I didn't get a bite. I didn't take the cake. I just wheeled him out of the private room, through the restaurant, and into the cool night air. My parents were in the parking lot, screaming at each other. Julian's Porsche was gone. How could you? Mom screamed when she saw me. She marched over, her face twisted. You planned this. You and that old man. Don't talk about your father like that, I said, my voice low. We didn't make Julian lie. We didn't make you steal. We just turned on the lights. Whatever you see now, that's on you. You ruined his life, Dad yelled. Mr. Robert is going to blackball him. He's in debt, Mason. He needed this. Then maybe he should have gotten a job instead of my inheritance, I said. I helped Grandpa into the truck. I folded the wheelchair. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. The drive back to the nursing home was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence. Did I do okay? Grandpa asked after a few miles. You were terrifying, I said. It was perfect. Good. He leaned his head back against the seat. He looked tired. The adrenaline was wearing off. When I got home that night, my phone blew up. Texts from Julian calling me every name in the book. Voicemails from Mom crying, accusing me of being jealous and spiteful. But there was one email that stood out. It was a notification from a legal service. Mr. Robert wasn't joking. He had filed a cease and desist against Julian regarding any mention of his company, and, interestingly, a tip-off to the IRS about Julian's assets. The next week was a slow-motion car crash for my family. Julian's Porsche was repossessed on Tuesday. I know this because my friend Wyatt saw the tow truck at Julian's office building and sent me a picture. Caption: The golden carriage turns back into a pumpkin. Apparently, Julian had taken out a massive personal loan to pay for the lifestyle he needed to court Chloe, using the ring's appraised value as collateral for a private lender. When the news broke that the ring was fake, the lender called in the loan immediately. My parents were scrambling. They were trying to refinance their house to bail Julian out. They were selling things. I stayed away. I focused on my work. I focused on Grandpa. But there was one loose end: the ring. On Friday, a package arrived at my apartment. It was a padded envelope. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was Julian's jagged scrawl. I opened it. Inside was the velvet box. I opened the box. The glass sapphire stared up at me. It was duller now, stripped of its myth. There was a note: "Take your trash. I hope you choke on it." I took the ring out. I held it up to the light. It wasn't trash. It was the ring Grandma wore. It was the ring she touched my face with. It was the ring she twisted nervously when she watched Jeopardy! I put it on a chain and hung it around my neck, tucking it under my shirt. A few days later, I went to visit Grandpa again. He was sitting in the garden area. "You got it back?" he asked. "Yeah." I pulled the chain out to show him. "Good," he nodded. "Now, about that land in West Creek. The swamp." "It's not a swamp anymore, Mason," Grandpa smiled. "I had Andrew, my lawyer, look into it. The city just approved a new zoning plan. They're building a commercial center and a park. That swamp sits right in the middle of the access road." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means," Grandpa said, "that the developers have been trying to contact the owner for months. Since the deed transferred to you, the offers should be coming your way." "How much?" "Last offer I heard about on the neighboring lot?" Grandpa paused. $2 million. I choked on my own spit. $2 million. Give or take. Eleanor knew. She always said, "Dirt is the only thing they're not making more of." I sat there, the weight of the glass ring against my chest, realizing that while my brother had fought for the flashy fake, Grandma had left me the muddy, messy, incredibly valuable reality. "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked. "Do they know?" "They think it's a swamp," Grandpa shrugged. "Let's keep it that way for a while. Let them focus on Julian's legal fees." I laughed. It was a real laugh, deep and loud. My parents had stolen a $50 ring and lost a multimillion-dollar son. They had bet on the wrong horse, the wrong value, the wrong life. "You know what I'm going to do?" I said. "Buy a Porsche?" Grandpa teased. "No," I said. "I'm going to build that park. I'm going to design the landscape for that commercial center myself. I'm going to name the garden after Grandma." "She'd like that," Grandpa said softly. "She'd like that very much." I looked at the sky. It was blue. A deep, clear, sapphire blue. "We won, Grandpa." "No, Mason." He patted my hand. "You didn't just win. You inherited the truth. That's worth more than any stone." And as I sat there with the man who raised me more than my own father ever did, I knew he was right. I had the ring. I had the land. But mostly I had my dignity. And Julian? Last I heard, he was driving a 2010 Honda Civic and working as a junior sales rep. Karma is a slow grinder, but man, does it grind fine. The silence in my apartment after the engagement party fiasco didn't last long. It was the calm before a hurricane, and I knew the winds were shifting direction. For the first time in my life, the storm wasn't battering me. It was tearing the roof off my parents' house, and I was watching from the safety of my own integrity. 3 days after Julian returned the ring, that piece of glass that had shattered his life, my phone rang. It was my mother. I looked at the screen, debating whether to answer. I knew exactly what the conversation would be. It would be a guilt trip wrapped in manipulation, served with a side of hysteria. I picked up. "Hello, Mom." "Mason." Her voice was tight, breathless. "We need to talk. You need to come over." "I'm busy, Mom. Work." "It's about Julian," she snapped, losing the fragile composure. He's in a bad way, Mason. Mr. Robert didn't just kick him out of the dinner. He pulled his influence. Julian lost his biggest client this morning. The rumors are spreading. People say he's a fraud. He lied about assets to secure a marriage and loans, I said calmly. That is fraud, Mom. He made a mistake, she screamed. He was trying to build a life. And you and your grandfather, you humiliated him. You destroyed him over a piece of jewelry that wasn't even real. The jewelry wasn't the point, I said, feeling that old, familiar exhaustion settling in my bones. The theft was the point. The disrespect was the point. We need money, Mason. She dropped the pretense. Julian's creditors are calling the house. He used our home address for some of his paperwork. They're threatening liens. We need to sell the gold setting of that ring. I know the stone is fake, but the gold is vintage. It's worth something. Bring it over. I actually laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. Even now, after everything, they still viewed my inheritance as their emergency fund. No, I said. What do you mean, no? It's family property. It's my property, I corrected. And I'm not melting down Grandma's legacy to pay for Julian's leasing fees. If he needs money, he can sell his golf clubs. Or get a second job. I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally drawing a boundary that stuck. But the real earthquake happened the following Tuesday. I was sitting in my small office at the landscaping firm, sketching out a design for a client's patio, when my receptionist buzzed me. Mason, there's a gentleman here to see you. And Andrew Miller. Andrew, Grandpa's lawyer. The man who had been handling the estate. Send him in. Andrew walked in, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than me. He was a serious man, devoid of humor but full of sharp intelligence. He sat down, placing the briefcase on my desk with a heavy thud. Mason, he nodded. How is Isaac doing? He's good. Eating too much pudding, but he's happy. Good. Andrew unclasped the briefcase. We need to discuss the West Creek property. The deed has been officially transferred to your name as of this morning. The county clerk took their sweet time. Right? The swamp. I smiled. Grandpa told me to check the zoning. Andrew didn't smile. He pulled out a thick stack of documents. It's not a swamp anymore, Mason, and it hasn't been for a long time. The city of West Creek has been planning a commercial expansion for 5 years. Your grandmother knew about the initial proposal back in the late 90s. That's why she bought it. She was playing the long game. He slid a map across the desk. It was a zoning map. My plot of land, about 4 acres of scrub brush and marshy grass, was outlined in bright red. But what caught my eye was what was around it. This is the new highway exit. Andrew pointed to a thick black line. And this is the proposed tech park and luxury retail center. My land was smack in the middle of the access route. It was the keystone. Without my land, the highway exit couldn't connect to the retail center. They can't build around it? I asked. Not without spending millions on bridges and drainage redirection, Andrew said. You hold the ace, Mason. The developers have been trying to contact the estate for 6 months. But because of the probate hold, we couldn't negotiate. Now we can. He pulled out a letter on heavy bond paper. This came yesterday. It's an opening offer from the Horizon Development Group. I took the letter. My eyes scanned the legal jargon until I hit the number at the bottom. $2,400,000. $2.4 million. The air left my lungs. I sat back in my chair, the paper trembling in my hand. I looked at the glass ring hanging around my neck, tucked under my shirt. Grandma had sold a real sapphire for 45 grand to buy dirt. And that dirt was now worth a fortune. She had turned a vanity item into a dynasty. Is this real? I whispered. As a heart attack, Andrew said. And honestly, we can probably get them to 2.6 if we hold out for a month. But I wouldn't push it too far. They have deep pockets, but they have schedules to keep. 2.4 is fine, I managed to say. It's more than fine. There is one thing, Andrew said, his eyes narrowing. This is public record now. The transfer of the deed, the zoning changes. It's all public. Your brother works in sales. He dabbles in real estate. He reads the trade papers. As if on cue, my cell phone began to ring. I looked at the ID. Then it stopped. Then Mom. Then Julian. They knew. They know, I told Andrew. Figured. Andrew stood up. Mason, listen to me. Legally, this money is yours. 100%. It is not marital property. It is not family property. It is an inheritance left solely to you. But they will come for it. They will beg, they will threaten, they will sue. You need to be prepared. I said, standing up. I felt taller, heavier. Let them come. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, I drove to the nursing home to tell Grandpa. We celebrated with sparkling apple cider. He laughed until he wheezed when I told him the number. 2 million, he cackled. Oh, Eleanor, you brilliant woman. I hope you're watching this. When I left the nursing home, I found them waiting for me. My parents and Julian were standing by my truck in the parking lot. It was like an ambush. Julian looked terrible, unshaven, wearing sweatpants, his eyes bloodshot. My parents looked aged, their faces drawn tight with anxiety and greed. Mason, Dad started, stepping forward. He tried to put a hand on my shoulder. I stepped back. Don't, I said. We heard, Julian said, his voice raspy. About the land. The West Creek deal. News travels fast, I said, unlocking my truck. We need to talk about the distribution, Dad said, clearing his throat. Obviously, Grandma intended for that land to benefit the whole family. She couldn't have known it would be worth this much. If she did, she would have split it. She knew exactly what she was doing, I said. Grandpa told me. She bought it as an investment, and she left it to the one person who visited her. The one person who mowed her lawn. The one person who didn't steal from her. I didn't steal, Julian shouted. It was a misunderstanding. And now, Mason, look at me. I'm ruined. I have nothing. Chloe is gone. My job is gone. They're going to bankrupt me. You have $2 million coming. 2 million. You can't just keep that. We're brothers. We weren't brothers when you took the ring, I said quietly. We weren't brothers when you mocked my job. We weren't brothers when you let Mom and Dad treat me like the help while you played the prince. We raised you, Mom shrieked, tears streaming down her face. We gave you a home. We fed you. You owe us. I owe you nothing. I looked her in the eye. I paid for my own college. I pay for Grandpa's care. I pay for my own life. You gave everything to Julian. You bet on him. You put all your emotional and financial chips on the golden child. I gestured to Julian, who was shivering in the cool night air. Well, look at your investment, I said. It crashed. You don't get to cash out my shares just because your portfolio failed. You selfish bastard, Julian spat, lunging at me. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him. He stopped inches from my face, his hands shaking. He was weak. He had always been weak, propped up by our parents' enabling. I'm going to sell the land, I said, my voice echoing in the empty parking lot. And do you know what I'm going to do with the money? They waited, hope flickering in their eyes. Maybe they thought I'd say I'd buy them a house, or pay off Julian's debt. I'm going to build a park, I said, a public garden, free for everyone. I'm going to use my degree, the one you guys laughed at, to design something beautiful. And I'm going to name it the Eleanor Miller Memorial Garden. You're wasting it, Dad yelled. You're throwing it away on flowers? It's not a waste. I opened my truck door. It's a legacy, something real, something that lasts longer than a Porsche lease. I climbed in and started the engine. Mason, Mom banged on the window. Mason, please, just a loan. 10,000, just to help with the lawyers. I looked at her through the glass. I saw the desperation, but I also saw the manipulation. If I gave them $10, they'd come back for 20. If I gave them 10,000, they'd want 100. I put the truck in reverse. As I pulled away, I watched them in the rearview mirror. 3 figures standing under the flickering street lamp, shrinking smaller and smaller until they were just shadows in the dark. I touched the ring under my shirt. It was warm against my skin. "Goodbye," I whispered. That night, I signed the papers with Horizon Development Group. But I added a clause. They could have the commercial frontage, but the 3 acres backing up to the creek. That was staying with me. I was going to build that park. And I was going to build my life on my own terms. 2 years later, the morning sun hit the leaves of the Japanese maples I had planted, turning them a brilliant, translucent crimson. I stood on the stone path, holding a cup of coffee, breathing in the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. It was finished. The Eleanor Miller Memorial Garden was open to the public. It wasn't a massive park, but it was a jewel. It had winding paths, a koi pond, benches dedicated to local history, and a playground for kids that was built from natural wood, not plastic. I walked toward the center of the garden. There, on a granite pedestal, was a bronze statue of a woman sitting on a bench, reading a book. It was Grandma. I had hired a local artist to sculpt it from old photos. Around the statue's neck, I had incorporated a small detail, a ring carved into the bronze. It was subtle, but I knew it was there. "Hey, boss." I turned. It was Wyatt. He was wearing a high-vis vest. He wasn't just my jeweler friend anymore. He was my project manager. I had used the inheritance money to start my own firm, Legacy Landscapes, and Wyatt, looking for a change from the retail grind, had come on board to handle operations. "Hey, Wyatt, how's the irrigation system holding up in the East Quadrant?" "Perfect," Wyatt grinned. "Pressure is stable. By the way, we got another inquiry. The city wants us to redesign the downtown plaza. That's the 3rd contract this month. Mason, we're going to need to hire more crews." "Good problem to have," I smiled. My life had changed in ways I couldn't have imagined. I wasn't just wealthy. I was respected. My work spoke for itself. I had clients waiting 6 months just for a consultation. I drove a nice truck now, a new one, reliable, paid for in cash, but I still lived simply. I bought a house near the garden, a place with big windows and lots of light. And Grandpa Isaac? He didn't make it to the opening. He passed away 6 months ago, peacefully, in his sleep. But he lived long enough to see the plans. He lived long enough to see the first shovel hit the dirt. I paid for a private nurse for his final year. I moved him out of Shady Oaks and into a luxury suite where he had a view of the river. Every Sunday we would eat pudding cups and watch football. He died knowing he had won. He died knowing I was safe. In his will, he left me everything he had left, his medals, his watch, and a letter. The letter was framed in my office. It read, "Values are like roots. You can't see them, but they're the only thing keeping you standing when the wind blows. I'm proud of you, Gardner. As for my family, I wish I could say they learned their lesson. I wish I could say they apologized and we reconciled. But life isn't a Hallmark movie." Julian declared bankruptcy. The shame of the fake ring and the financial fraud investigation by the IRS broke him. He lost his job, his condo, and his reputation. He moved back in with Mom and Dad. Last I heard, he was working at a car rental agency near the airport. I saw him once from a distance when I was flying out for a landscape conference. He looked older. He looked tired. He was wiping down the dashboard of a sedan, wearing a cheap polo shirt. I didn't approach him. There was nothing left to say. My parents had to downsize. They sold the big house, the one with the facade, and moved into a 2-bedroom townhouse on the other side of the city. They were bitter. I heard through the grapevine that they told anyone who would listen that their ungrateful son stole their inheritance and abandoned them. They tried to sue me, of course. Shortly after the land deal, they found a lawyer desperate enough to take the case. They claimed undue influence on Grandma, but Andrew destroyed them in court. He produced decades of medical records proving Grandma's sanity, and he produced the log of visitors to her house. Mason Miller, 452 visits. Thomas and Catherine Miller, 12 visits. Julian Miller, 3 visits. The judge threw the case out in 20 minutes and ordered them to pay my legal fees. That was the final nail in their financial coffin. I walked over to the bench next to Grandma's statue. A young woman was sitting there, reading a book while her toddler chased a butterfly near the flowers. "It's beautiful here," she said, looking up at me. "My son loves the flowers. Thank you for building this." "You're welcome," I said. My grandmother would have loved to see him running around. I sat down on the other end of the bench. I reached into my shirt and pulled out the ring. The glass sapphire. I still wore it every day. People sometimes asked me why a millionaire landscape architect wore a cheap piece of costume jewelry. I told them the truth. This ring, I would say, holding the glass up to the sun, is worth $50, but it saved my life. It taught me the difference between price and value. It taught me that people who love you want you to have the real thing, the land, the future, the truth. And people who use you are only interested in the shine. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. Yeah, that Chloe. We had run into each other at a coffee shop a year after the breakup. She apologized. She told me she felt horrible about how she treated me at the dinner. We weren't dating. She wasn't my type, too much high-maintenance energy, but we were friendly. "Chloe, hey, saw the article about the garden in the City magazine. Looks amazing. Julian tried to friend request me yesterday. Blocked him. Hope you're good." I chuckled and typed back, "Doing great. Thanks." I put the phone away. I looked at the garden. This was my inheritance. Not the money in the bank, though that was nice. But this peace. This ability to sit on a bench in the middle of a Tuesday and feel absolutely, completely sufficient. I wasn't the backup plan anymore. I wasn't the scapegoat. I was the gardener. I had pruned the dead branches from my family tree, and for the first time, I was letting the sunlight hit the soil. I stood up, took a sip of my coffee, and walked back toward my team. We had work to do. There was a fountain installation in the north corner that needed my approval. As I walked, I touched the medals on my own lapel, Grandpa's medals. I wore them on special occasions now. Today was just a Tuesday, but it felt special. Every day of freedom felt special. Grandpa was right. Let them keep the fake ring. Let them have the illusion. I'll take the dirt. I'll take the work. I'll take the truth. Because in the end, the glass breaks. But the land? The land abides. This story isn't just about a ring or a vindictive brother. It's about the fundamental difference between net worth and self-worth. We live in a world that is obsessed with the flex, the flashy cars, the big diamonds, the curated Instagram posts. My brother Julian and my parents spent their entire lives chasing the appearance of wealth, to the point where they sacrificed their integrity and their family bonds to maintain it. They valued the symbol of the legacy, the ring, more than the source of the legacy, Grandma Eleanor. In contrast, Grandma and Grandpa understood that real value is often hidden. It's in the swamp land that looks ugly but holds potential. It's in the quiet moments of caretaking, not the loud moments of celebration. By chasing the fake shine, my family lost the real treasure. Both the multimillion-dollar land and the relationship with a son who would have supported them. So, here's my question for you. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you had to choose between looking successful and actually being true to yourself? Or have you ever discovered that something or someone you undervalued turned out to be the most precious thing in your life? I want to hear your stories. Drop a comment below with your perspective. Or, if you agree that integrity is the ultimate inheritance, just comment the word "good," so I know you stood with me and Grandpa Isaac until the very end. Your interaction helps the story reach more people who might need to hear that it's okay to be the scapegoat who walks away to build their own garden. Thank you for listening. Stay real.